Good evening. It's now 6 o'clock. I'm handing over to Dr. Ziyanda Ngugudusela. Dr. Ziyanda, over to you.
Thank you, Rainier. Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, and welcome to the first webinar for 2026. We're really excited to be hosting this webinar and looking at, not just medicine, but what happens beyond medicine, what happens beyond medical school. We have an amazing lineup this evening. And as a means of starting off, I'd like to welcome our CEO, Dr. Mzulungile Nodikida, to do the opening, and welcome to all of you. Over to you, CEO.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Z. I hope you can see me there. And I know that I need to apologize to you that I am not using your background. I know I will be in trouble with this. But colleagues, good evening to all the colleagues who have joined online, and welcome to the first webinar of the year. The focus for this year is really on the unemployed doctors and what the South African Medical Association has been doing in relation to try and solve this challenge that has been with us now for, I think this is the third year. So our approach has been a two-pronged approach. One, we've engaged government quite extensively on making sure that at least we get a budget being set aside specifically for the employment of doctors. And this budget, we've calculated it and we've estimated it to be sitting at around an average of about 2 billion. And we've made the recommendations to government that funding of this nature needs to be ring-fenced for purposes of the appointment of doctors within the state. This is the approach that we are pushing quite a great deal, because the survey we did last year demonstrated that in the main, most doctors like to remain in the state. Some want to specialize. So we that's the first part of our approach. The second part has been to look at what alternatives exist in the business side of healthcare. And this webinar looks into that. You will have amazing presentation from Don. Don works for, we call them, Don, I hope I'm correct, that it's a parastatal under the leadership of the Minister of Small Businesses Development. We had a session with them last year, and we've looked at various models that could work from a funding point of view, or a financing models that could assist doctors at the entry of their when they want to venture into the private sector. Now, it could be doctors who the initiative focuses on the unemployed doctors, but we're looking at the broader spectrum, because we've also identified that junior specialists also struggle because of the barriers to entry, specifically financing. So we are looking into that, and you will hear from the mixture of presenters that Z has arranged for you. And I hope you enjoy this. So we welcome you, and we hope that you will have a great session with our speakers. Thank you very much, Z. I hand back over to you. Again, apologies for not using your background. I know I'll be in trouble. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO. We can deal with that tomorrow morning at work. So without wasting time, colleagues, just some house rules. You will not have an opportunity to switch on your mic and ask questions, but please feel free to pose your question on the chat throughout the different presentations, so that we can pose the questions to the speakers as immediately after their presentation. And therefore, now I can welcome Mr. Don Mashele, who CEO has already explained what role he plays. But today, we just thought he should come and speak to the funding opportunities that are currently available to doctors. And please make sure that you have your pen and paper ready so that you can ask as many questions as possible to him. And this is not only just for unemployed doctors, it's also for doctors who are thinking about expanding their practices. So thank you, Mr. Don Mashele. Over to you, sir.
No, thank you, Program Director. Good evening, everyone. Let me share my presentation, and then you tell me once it's, you can see it on your screen.
Yes, thank you. You can see it. You can just put, yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. As one presents, as I said, I'm Don Mashele from SETFA, Small Enterprise Development and Finance Agency, an agency under the Department of Small Business Development. The unit that I come from is important to indicate that, to show that what the new agency's vision is. It's a unit called Ecosystem and Stakeholder Management. So what we do there, amongst other things, are strategic partnerships, because in this space of entrepreneurship, funding and support, we can't do anything really without partnerships. So that's why we're here, and we feel honored to be part of this conversation. So as I present, I'll be presenting what we have as programs. So I think the angle in terms of how you process the information is to look at access. Is this accessible to the target market that we intend serving? And number two, it could be saying that yes, there are these programs, but in the space of healthcare, businesses, etc., these are the challenges that we have. So that what one does is not a question of saying you want to answer all the questions on the platform. Some of the things is to take them back and say, guys, we participated in this webinar. This is what is coming up from the market. So it helps in terms of our R&D. I thought I should say that before I proceed. So this vision and mission, I won't go into detail in terms of this. We'll share the presentation. But what the message is saying is that we're here to support businesses and address the market failure. Market failure meaning we support those businesses that find it very difficult to access funding from the normal private sector. So the programs that we have should be different. We need to be solving a particular problem in terms of market failure. The organization has got various units, but today we'll be focusing on the unit that deals with finance. So when it comes to finance, we provide funding directly to MSMEs, and we also work with intermediaries, where some of the funding, we can bucket the funding together and on lend. And those intermediaries, they're on lend to small businesses. We also provide what we call business development support. And this is more like capacity building. I've got one slide that talks to that, what are the things that we do in that space. So in terms of funding, I'll start by just outlining the instruments, the funding instruments that we have. We only have debt funding. We do not have equity. The debt funding that we provide, some of the programs are blended. Blended meaning that we've got a combination of a loan and a grant in one instrument. I'll outline that later in my presentation. But in terms of the instruments, it's the normal vanilla type instruments that you'll get in the commercial sector. Number one is, or commercial banks, if I may be specific. So we can assist businesses. It could be someone who wants to start a business, someone who wants to expand a business, or someone who would want to acquire a business. So we can support in all the three phases. The first instrument here is asset finance. Here by asset, we're describing any asset. It could be equipment, it could be machinery, it could be motor vehicles, etc. But we are talking about an asset that can be identified by way of a unique registration number. So we can support those businesses businesses to acquire such. So that's what we do under our asset finance. I won't go line by line, as I said earlier. We'll share the presentation just if you need more details. The second instrument is what we call term loans. So term loans will support businesses to deal with issues of working capital. Some of the businesses, yes, they may need assets, but sometimes you might find that you need working capital for one thing or the other. In terms of overheads, we can use the term loan instrument to deal with that. And the term loan can also be used for your general fixtures, furniture, those kind of things, which fall outside of tangible assets. The other instrument is a revolving credit facility. This normally we do for existing clients. So some of our clients will have contracts. So if someone has got a contract, and the contract, say, argument's sake, the duration, if I put an example, is 5 years, the contract, and the value of that contract maybe, say, 20 million. So what it means is within a period of 5 years, you can get work from whoever the off-taker is to the value of, say, 20 million rands. So what we do is the first application that you put forth, we will do a thorough due diligence. But when we go forward, we more like do like a revolving credit. So you don't want each time you get a purchase order, you come and make a fresh application. So that's why we use normally the revolving credit facility for that. Bridging loans, some of our clients get contracts. So you've got a contract, there's no funding to service that particular contract. Then we look at the value of the contract, we check what is it that you need, and then we provide funding to service or to finance that contract. Commercial property finance, I think this can also be relevant for those businesses in case you want to open a surgery and you want to purchase say it's a house that you want to convert into a business. So we can use this commercial property finance to do those kind of things. The criteria, I will be very quick also in terms of this because it's generic normal criteria that we use. As the CEO was saying, that we fall under government. So whatever criteria that we have is in line with what other government programs have here in terms of access. Number one being you have to be a South African citizen or have permanent residence. Number two, the business must be legally registered, with our CIPC. The other criteria, eligibility criteria, is that we can only finance businesses that operate within the Republic. We don't do businesses outside the country. If you've got employees working in the business, we'll say at least 95% of those employees have to be South African. The balance, if not South African, must have valid work permits. And the other one, which is very important for the purpose of this evening's discussion, is that you have to be operationally involved in a business. So it cannot be on a part-time basis. So operational involvement does not mean physical presence, but you need to demonstrate that you have got a line of sight in terms of that particular business. So it cannot be something that is done on a part-time basis. There must be the issue of developmental impact because we are a state DFI. So the things around developmental impact that we check, some of them could be creation of jobs, supporting businesses in township and rural areas, supporting young people, youth below 35, supporting businesses that are owned and managed by young people, not by young people, by women entrepreneurs, and also, last but not least, businesses that are owned by entrepreneurs with disabilities. 51% of what we finance, the ownership of the business is that 51% ownership must be held by a Black entrepreneur. So if you're in a partnership, at least the majority shareholding must be Black owned. Exclusions, we do have a lot of exclusions. Again, in the interest of time, I won't go line by line because what we are talking about here in terms of the sector, the businesses that is run by the colleagues on the platform are not an exclusion, because if you talk about the health sector, whatever business that you run under the sector, it won't fall under our exclusion. So I will skip the slide. The programs that you, and as I skip the slide, if program director want me to go back to it to go deeper, I can let it do that. I'm just doing this in the interest of time. The lending program, so that's where it becomes very crucial, because what we have done is it cannot be a one-size-fits-all. So we have looked at the market and said, what are the programs that we need to put together and tailor for specific markets? So the second few slides will be talking about such programs. So I'm hoping it may not be tonight, but at least we have planted the seed that in the space of healthcare, you may look at these programs and say, but our challenges are different. And we need to be specific. We need to document what are those challenges that are different and cannot be addressed by the funding programs that I'm going to apply to. So once we have that information, it's part of talking to the market and tailoring solutions in line with what the market is looking for. So the first program is what we call Township and Rural Entrepreneurship Program. So this program is actually looking at supporting businesses in township and rural areas. So here we provide what we call blended financing. Blended financing combine a loan and a grant into one instrument. 50% of what we provide is a grant, you don't have to pay it back. The other 50% is a loan, and the interest rate that we charge is actually fixed at 5%. So we want to check what the prime rate is and then put the margin for risk. Now, we are saying 5% is fixed. Then there was the grant that we provide is a maximum of 100,000 rand. So if you're looking for, say, for 200,000, 100,000 is a grant, you don't have to pay it back. The other 100,000 is a loan at 5%. If the maximum that we provide for now under the scheme is 1 million rand, so you won't apply for anything above 1 million rand. So if you're looking for 1 million rand, as an example, 100,000 rand will be a grant, because that's where the grant threshold is kept at, and the 900,000 rand will be a loan at 5%. This program is trying to address issues of carrying and equity, because we do know that most businesses operating in township and rural areas, people don't have equity to put into the business. That's why we're saying, let's reduce the issue of put some equity into the business. And the next one is the issue of the cost of capital, the interest rate and other finance charges. So that's why the limit is for interest rate, it's 5%. The criteria, it's very, very simple in terms of the eligibility criteria. Just to be a registered business owned by South Africans. For this one, 70% of employees have to be South African, and it must operate in a township or a village. The second program is called Amavuladlela Funding Scheme. This scheme is under review as we speak, but for currently what we have, it's a program that is targeting entrepreneurs with disabilities. So here we don't have a grant component. We don't have, it's not blended for now, but the beauty about this instrument is that the limit is 15 million rand. Actually, I forgot to mention that our limit as CEDFA is 15 million rands. We don't do anything above 15 million rands. What makes it attractive is that the interest rate that we charge under the scheme is prime plus 5. So you know that if you've got interest rate at prime plus 5, that's really, really cheap funding that you get through the scheme. And we can also provide grants for feasibility study as well as mentorship. Like I said earlier, targeting entrepreneurs with disabilities. The third one, Small Enterprise Manufacturing Support Program. Here we're talking about those businesses that are in the manufacturing space. Manufacturing, we're talking about any form of manufacturing, including agro-processing. The limit here is 15 million rands. It is also blended. 20% of what we provide is a grant. And the other loan part, which is 80%, is a loan. But for this one, the loan part we charge prime. Unlike the township program where we said we charge 5%, this one we charge only prime. The grant is limited to 2 million rand. So we've got a matrix where we can put an application into a matrix and to tell us what is the balance or the breakdown between a grant and a loan. But the principle is that 20% is a grant, maximum grant facility. It's 2 million rand interest rate. It's prime. Again, as you can see, the criteria in terms of access, South African citizens, 100% owned by South Africans. We're saying here at least 2 years in business, because manufacturing, more often than not, is business to business kind of transaction. So it is important at least to have tested the market somewhat. But it doesn't mean that if we've got strong offtakes, we cannot assist. We can assist if we've got a strong offtake or strong letters of intent. This one is the Youth Challenge Fund. The Youth Challenge Fund is for young people below 35. So we've got what we call a red channel and a blue channel. And the red channel is nothing but those businesses in the technology and innovation space. So we classify them under the red channel. The blue channel is any other sector outside technology and innovation. So for this one, for startup businesses, we limit the facility to 2 million rands. But if someone wants to expand, the limit is now 15 million rand. So in terms of startup, it's also blended in a sense that it's a combination of a grant and a loan. For the red channel, the grant is 40%, doesn't have to be paid back, and the loan is 60%. The interest rate is 5%. And for the blue channel, the grant is a bit lower at 30%, and the loan is 70%. The loan again 5%. So if you take a simple example where a young person wants to start a business, they're looking for 1 million rand. Let me focus on the blue channel. They're getting 300,000 as a grant and getting 700,000 as a loan at 5%. And again, like I said, this deals with the issue of the cost of capital. For expanding businesses, the maximum there becomes 15 million rand. The split between the grant and the loan is the same, 20%, 80% for the red channel and the blue channel. So what is important to note here is that this is a scheme for young people. I won't go through this, but what we're trying to show here is that when you submit an application, it is important to make sure that all the documents that we require are submitted. So what this slide is trying to indicate, because sometimes, there is that tendency of looking at the documents and the criteria says we need about, say, 25 documents as an example. It might sound like it's just too much red tape, but when you look at each and every line item, in terms of those documents, what are the reasons we're looking for those? This slide is trying to address that issue. So number one is affordability testing. Remember, we're a DFI, we're not a bank. So when a business comes and apply at CIFA, more often than not, it will be for the first time that we get to know about that business. So we need to dig deeper. We are a registered entity with the National Credit Regulator. We are governed by the National Credit Act. So we need to make sure that whatever we do it following the prescripts of the National Credit Act. So the issue of affordability testing, when you look at that from number 1 to number 16, all those things help us to take a decision based on affordability. The other one is the FICA requirements, the know your client. We're looking for those things to make sure that we comply with FICA. Capacity to deliver. If I use an example that will be relevant for tonight, if you want to run a practice, we need to check that you've got the right qualifications, those kind of things, properly registered, that you've got capacity to deliver the service that the committee needs out there. Commitment, you'll see here, we don't measure commitment through what normally a bank would do to say, okay, now put down collateral so that we can measure commitment. No, in our space, a business must repay the loan, but the commitment has to come by you as a business person signing surety on behalf of that business, so that when things get bad, we're all there in that business, making sure that we are committed. There's issues around compliance. The compliance environment in the lending space is very, very, very rigid in a sense, but we need to make sure that we do comply. We do assist businesses in terms of this, because some of the businesses, you might find that it's become very, very difficult or challenging to meet the compliance requirement. This slide is actually, I checked the program, there's somewhere where I think there's a discussion around putting together a CV or something. So a business also must have a CV, if I simplify it like that. So we don't want to say this, it's a business plan, because a business plan, you don't draft a business plan to apply for a loan. You draft a business plan to run a business. But if you want to apply for a loan, there are certain things that as lenders we need. So when you look at this template, it's actually guiding the proposal. If you put together a funding proposal, what are the things that you must think of so that you don't, get a generic business plan whereby some of the information you don't need, the things that we need are not provided. So these guides to say what are the things that we need. Number one, company information, shareholder information, the company structure. So when you look at those kind of things, if you can cover your funding proposal and it covers all those things, then you have got a proposal that is actually ticking the right boxes. The beauty about this framework, we just did not develop it as CEDFA. We worked with the IDC, we worked with some banks, because as lenders, in terms of the requirements for funding, the things that we look for are very, very similar. Where we'll differ, like I said earlier, it will be issues of collateral. We can do startups, we can do risky businesses. But in terms of how you must package the proposal, the pitch, it's very, very similar. So that is that. Let me conclude with this slide. I know program director is not part of the discussion because it's about funding. But remember now that as CEDFA, we are a merged entity with former CEDA. So what we also provide is business development support, because it's very good for us to say, this is what we do, but what if businesses need assistance? What are the things that they have to do what are the things that those businesses have to do to meet the criteria? So through our branch network, we can support businesses from different phases of development or the life cycle. From ideation, it's still an idea. You don't know maybe where to put a practice, as an example. So it's still an idea. We can help with the feasibility study there, make sure that we check the environment. Once we pass that ideation phase, we do the business planning now. Work with you to put together a business plan. Once we are happy with the business plan, it comes now to the issue of registration and the launch, and we formalize the business. We enter the market, and then that's where we apply for funding and scale up the business. So I thought I'd also share this slide because it's actually relevant in terms of what we want to do. So yeah, our contact details are there, but yeah, that's the last slide. Thank you, Dr. Zianda.
Thank you very much. Don, please go back one slide to your contact details, because I'm sure the doctors want to take pictures. Let's keep it right there. I have 2 or 3 questions for you. So the first one is, you spoke about the different programs that you have for funding, right? And you spoke about the township and rural area program. Now, can we just get clarity on that one? When a township, it's quite clear what you're referring to. So if it's a solo practice or a group practice in the township, does this program cover it? And then also in the rural areas, how rural is rural? Okay, I'm born in the Eastern Cape, and as far as I'm concerned, even the town is like a village. So can you just explain, can doctors from Eastern Cape, doctors from rural Limpopo, Mpumalanga, actually apply for this program as well in those one street towns that don't even have a ShopRite? Over to you, Don.
Yes, the group practice can qualify, because it all depends on the type of legal entity, because remember, we found a legal entity. So if it's a group of doctors, you probably have a special purpose vehicle, whatever that special purpose vehicle is. So that is the SPV that must apply, so that it doesn't have to be individual doctors within a group, if I may say. So we will look at the SPV, and then we will be looking to fund that particular SPV. So if that answers the question, I'll move to the next one. Yeah, it's a tricky one, because the issue of development does not make, for instance, you mentioned Eastern Cape, it does not make East London a township or a rural area because there's no development. These things have been classified all along to say township in terms of the postal code is like this, rural in terms of the postal code is like this. So we do get those applications. I'll give a practical example. Someone who will be in, if you're familiar with the Alexander area around Limbro Park, when you look at Limbro Park, someone will say, but we're a street away from Alexander, and we're another street away from Weinberg. So those are the discussions that we have, and then we then say, let's look at the details of this particular application. To answer the question, clearly, if it's not classified as a township or rural area, it won't qualify. But if you come and say, but guys, looking at this area, I'm servicing people that are based in the rural area, in the township because of my location, we then have to take it to the credit committee and make that case. So it's not a cast in stone guide, but the principle is that the postal codes tell us exactly which one is a town, which one is a rural area.
Okay, I'm going to take two more questions. I'm just waiting for more questions to come through in the chat. The other question is about the small enterprise program. You spoke about this is for manufacturing environments. So I just wanted to check in the medical field, if, for example, a doctor decides they want to manufacture their own scrubs or manufacture their own, let's say, incubators or anything in clinical medicine, would that type of a fund also cover them? And then as well as with the youth challenge, when you say tech, is this just any type of an innovation? So, for example, what we see with junior doctors is that we have innovations being set up, for how we refer patients. There are innovations on how to communicate amongst medical doctors. I just wanted to check if the medical field would be able to also qualify for those two programs.
So when it comes to manufacturing, anything where you process raw material to manufacture anything, you say, okay, I've got my raw materials as inputs. This is what I'm manufacturing. The value addition, this is what I'm putting in, and this is what coming as a product. So it's as generic as that. So if there is an element of manufacturing in the value chain, we will be able to look at that. And yeah, I think that maybe if the answer is not clear, you can come back to Zian. But all I'm saying is that if you're manufacturing something, okay, I've got this raw material. This is what I'm putting together. This is what I'm mixing. And this is the final product that I'm taking to market. So that process tells us, okay, here there's an element of manufacturing. There's value addition. Then in that case, then we would say it will fall under it will qualify under the small enterprise manufacturing support program. Innovation, yes, it's broad as it is. It can be any form of innovation. So if you come and say, okay, it has to be defined as innovation, and one will be specific to say, when it comes to innovation, you only consider this and this and that. So if you are saying that you're applying for funding, and this is the innovation that you're putting into the market, and it's something that say, okay, probably it was never done before, it's solving a particular problem, it's a solution to something, then we will then look at it as innovation. So it's as broad as all that.
All right. Thank you. Then the last question is on the challenges of meeting compliance. I think as medical doctors, we just find the paperwork to be just so it's just overwhelming. Is there support for that type of work? Can a doctor just pay someone to put this paperwork together for them? Of course, they'll give them the documents, but is there that kind of a support?
So through CEDFA, the kind of support that we have, remember I said we are a meshed entity with the former CEDA, Small Enterprise Development Agency. We are now one institution. So when you look at that gives us a broader network of branches all over the country. So if someone wants to apply and they're saying that this is my proposal, this is what I'm looking for, and these are and they don't give their criteria. And so these are the documents that we need. There are certain things that as an applicant, you need to go and look for and bring into the office. For instance, If you're saying, okay, I need a tax PIN for SARS, no one will do the runaround for you. You just have to do that. But there are certain things where you're saying that, okay, now this one becomes a bit tricky. And then we have got other partnerships with the CIPC and all other partners to say, how can you work with applicants, put a service provider or in-source a service provider to assist in terms of those things. But it has to be very unique. It can be because, someone does not want to get an ID certified, if I give a simplified example. But there are certain things that is, okay, this we understand, we will assist. But it's not a broad brush, we have to categorize them and say, these are the ones that we can do.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Mashele. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate, we've got the contact details on the screen. So definitely, I'm sure you will get a lot of emails, phone calls from our medical doctors. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. Just to say, as the South African Medical Association, we continue to work with Don's office, SEDFA. We are currently looking at, trying to standardize, to create something for the medical profession so that it's easier for us to be plugged in. We want a sort of plug and go type of a situation, but we're still like in the conceptual phases of that. But you must know, as your association, we really take this seriously, and we are working behind the scenes to ensure that all these application processes, the access to this, to these funding mechanisms is easily accessible, because we have quite a niche type of a business in medicine, in the form of the practices that we have. It may be solo, it may be group practices, and in the future, we're going to have hospitals, we're going to have all sorts of business ventures as medical doctors. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can create with you, SEDFA. Thank you very much, Mr. Don. You can be excused. Thank you. Then our next speaker is Ms. Hosiame Sihlabi. She is the Summer Human Resources Manager, and she will be talking to us about CV writing for medical doctors. And the reason why this is such an important topic is because whenever medical doctors have got to apply for jobs, remember that we go from internship to community service. You don't have to apply for a job, but then once you are beyond community service, then now you've got to apply for a job. And most of the time, the CVs that we see are really, really shocking. So I want to hand over to you then, Hosiame, to take us through.
Thank you, Ziyanda. Thank you to SAMA members. We're quite excited on behalf of HR to be given an opportunity to share some of our skills and expertise that we have around CV drafting. Dr. Z, I see you've got my screen up. So today's session is titled Beyond Medicine, right? And this is because clinical competency is the heartbeat of our profession. Career progression is increasingly dependent on how well we present our skills, how well we present our experiences, and the overall impact we make in the different positions that we hold. And therefore, a CV has, instrumentally moved a little bit away from just being an administrative requirement when you're making application. It has now moved towards this document being seen as a strategic document that tells us a little bit about your professional journey, a little bit about your professional story. And for that reason, this session aims to equip you with practical guidance to positioning yourself as confidently for opportunities within and abroad clinical roles. Dr. Z, if you could move to my next slide. All right, so the purpose of the program is in threefold. Firstly, we want to give you practical tools on how you could draft a strong professional CV. The second leg of it is to sharing with you on how you could improve your competitiveness for a wide range of roles. And these roles range from clinical practice, specialized training, leadership, academia, as well as policy roles. And lastly, third leg of the purpose of the program is to strengthen career mobility, both internationally and locally, by ensuring that your CV meets professional and global expectations. So one of the things I'm sure you're asking is that why did we see the need as summer to put together this program, particularly around CV drafting? And the reason really is that many of our doctors are exceptionally skilled professionals. But yet we see that often in the documents, in the CVs that they submit, they do not reflect the depth of their expertise or impact that they have in the different roles that they hold. So often than not, you would find a CV that enlists a whole range of responsibilities and duties. And with that said, they do not necessarily show the impact, the outcome of their roles, their contribution, what you actually achieved over the period that you've held that position, the improvements that you came up with. So with increasing competition for post funding and leadership opportunities, a strong CV is essential. So at the same time, while we say that this is an opportunity for you to showcase all the outcomes and the contributions that you would have made, please be mindful that every CV must remain ethical, accurate, and aligned with the HPCSA as well as professional standards. So when you get to applying for positions, one of the things I advise applicants is that you need to show that you understand the position in which you're applying for. And in understanding the position that you're applying for, that helps you to align then your CV to this position that you are applying for. So, keynote message today is that there is no one size fits all CV. So your CV should be purpose driven. It should be aligned to the position that you're applying for, where you are going with your career. So a CV, and as an example, a CV for a specialist will differ significantly from a CV of an academia, a CV of a leadership, or a policy work that you would like to apply for. So it is very important that you tailor your CV to demonstrate clarity and purpose. And this, I want to emphasize that when you do that, it significantly improves your chances of being shortlisted. The next slide will tell you a little bit about some of the structures that we look at when we present our CVs or when we draft our CVs. So any CV must be structured firstly with the mind or with the thinking that it should immediately make sense to the reader. It should immediately make sense to the recruiters or the institutions that you are applying for. Remember, when you are making an application for a position, please be mindful that the recruiter or the institution will most probably be looking at 1,000 more CVs. So what is important to highlight is your personal details. Please list your regulatory details such as the HPCSA registration and scope of practice. So, and this should be reflected as clear and prominent as possible. Your qualification, training, clinical experience, and competencies should be presented in a logical manner. And this should be followed by the research and the teaching that you would have experienced, the leadership roles that you've taken. Where applicable, please showcase the teams that you've led if you've had opportunities to do so. And I think around structure, what I want to highlight is that structure brings clarity and credibility. At first glance, for the first few seconds, you want your CV or your application to come across to the reader in a sensible way, in a structured way, in a way that it is almost easy for the reader to understand who you are, what your skills are, and what your contribution also is. I want to also share with you that there is a new trend also that's come on the surface around some of the things we need to consider when putting together a CV. So traditionally, you would find that when you put together a CV, you would enlist again a whole host of what you do. So you would be listing what your job descriptions. And the movement from that traditional setup into a more relatable and more relevant or more trending way of writing out a CV is based on what we call an outcome-based CV. And essentially what that means really is that rather than simply stating your job as it is, take the opportunity to demonstrate in your CV what you do and what you do well. Please indicate the impact you make in the different positions and the roles that you hold. For example, one of the examples that I would like to make around the contributions that you would want to highlight in your CV is around if you have had the opportunity to improve in clinical outcomes, please reflect that in your CV. If you've led initiatives, please show that in your CV. If you've participated in quality improvement of projects, please show that in your CV. An outcome-based CV allows decision makers to quickly understand your value and your overall contribution to their organization. One of the things that I've said is that I use this word often to showcase. And one other word that I want to start now using is we want you to shine. We want you to stand out. We want your CV to stand out. But equally, two aspects are important in putting together a CV. We need to remain ethical. We need to remain professional. So ethics do not just stop at the clinical practice. They extend beyond, they extend and they give us an opportunity to present ourselves professionally. CVs must protect patients' confidentiality. CVs must be accurate. Please do not exaggerate on your CV. Also important, and I would like you to also notice that please avoid misrepresenting yourself on the CV. Could be a career limiting move. It could really have serious professional consequences. So we try and advise rather that you have a clean, professionally formatted, and honest presentation. And with that, when you present your CV in this way, please also know that it reinforces trust and credibility. Showcasing, again, is another word that we use. We want to let you know that showcasing CPDs and long life learning is important to demonstrate and showcase in your CV. Our view is that continuous professional development is the cornerstone of medical practice. Your CV should reflect CPD activities, accredited courses, conferences, and such, or any research that you would have been involved in. What this does is that it signals to employers and institutions that you're applying into that you have remained engaged, that you have remained current, and that you are committed to lifelong learning. And this is a critical contribute in a rapidly evolving healthcare environment. In the earlier slides, you would have seen that I have highlighted research, teaching, and leadership exposure. We've also seen in a lot of documents, CV documents that we've seen that many doctors seemingly are leaning to undermining the value of teaching. They undermine the value of reflecting research and leadership contribution on their CVs. I want to share with you to say supervising students, serving on committees, participating in audits, or even leading teams all demonstrate influence beyond the direct patient care. These experiences should intentionally be captured on your application or your CV as they reflect system-level impact and leadership potential. The next slide I want to also share with you, and this is around the new trends that we see happening. And I suppose this digitization is something that affects all parts of business. And for that reason, you will see that modern recruitment is increasingly digital. So what that means also is that before your CV reaches me as the reviewer, the human reviewer, it would oftenly be screened electronically. And this is why it is important when you put together your application or when you submit your application, you ensure that it is linked to the position that you're applying for. Because you are targeting that position, please be clear. Use keywords, use punch words, use a clean formatted CV. Customizing your CV for each opportunity and keeping it concise improves visibility and ensures your application is not overlooked. The next slide speaks about personal branding, and this is where again you get an opportunity to, this is again where you get the opportunity to shine, to make your CV shine. And from the term itself, personal branding, it may sound unfamiliar in the medicine world, but simply put, it means that you are intentional about how your professional identity is communicated. And so your CV should reflect not only what you do, but also who you are as a unique healthcare professional. So whether you are in leadership roles, in education, or an advocate, a clear value proposition builds credibility and trust. So from the session we have had right now, and the skills and the expertise that we've shared, we would want you to highlight the following outcomes. So the expected outcomes of this program, including drafting of a strong, clear CV, increased confidence in presenting your professional journey, improving employability, and better alignment with ethical and regulatory standards. These outcomes benefit not only you as a medical doctor, but the organizations and healthcare systems they serve. In closing, we want to emphasize that a well-drafted CV is a strategic tool. Upskilling doctors in this area empowers them to succeed, to access opportunities, influence systems, and progress professionally. Ultimately, investing in doctors' professional development strengthens the broader healthcare workforce and patient outcome. This brings us to the end of our slide presentation. The presentation was short, but I'm hoping that you have learned, and some of these techniques and principles that we've shared with you, you will use going forward in drafting your CV or making amendments to your CV. Thank you, Dr. Ziyanda.
Thank you, Hosiami. Thank you for that very insightful presentation. So I have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, of all these slides you have shared, how long is the CV supposed to be actually? What would you recommend? Because we see like with different lengths of CVs, and for what you have mentioned, it sounds like a thesis, the CV that you want us to
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Dr. Ziyanda. So a good CV is around 3 pages. You take the time in the first page to do an executive summary. And again, the executive summary should be targeted at the position that you're applying for. So if you are going for a leadership position, emphasize your skills, your expertise, your experience, the impact you have had in these leadership positions. The second page or part of the first page could include your personal details, your qualifications, just a summary of it. Important to also note when you are, and I want to emphasize this, when you are applying for leadership roles, please make sure that you emphasize roles of leadership that you have been placed in, that you have experience in, so that it's easier to understand. The recruiter can easily understand who you are, what you're bringing on board, what your impact is, and it's easier for us to then easily align your talent to the position that we've advertised.
All right, thank you. The next question is, how recent of an interaction should one have had with the references?
A wonderful question. Thank you. So just a follow up and maybe build up to the issue of references. My suggestion is that if you are applying for a position in leadership, and this is an example again, please make sure that you are only making reference to those references that speak to that role of leadership. And I think the question is that how often should you be in touch with your, it's important to be with every application that you put forward. You almost want to give a heads up to the person that's going to giving your references to say, listen, I've done this. Remember, this is what I used to do. And it keeps the memory in their heads fresh about what you did, what your contribution was, and it becomes then easy for them to share this shared understanding of your work with others. I'm hoping this answers the question.
That's so good. Yeah. I think most of the trap that we fall into is us not writing, not creating a purpose-driven CV. I think that is such an important point because I think we just take it so much for granted that, you know what, I've done internship, I've done ComServe, these people know that I'm a medical doctor. But I think what you're raising about tailoring your CV for the position and using keywords, and selling yourself is actually very important. But I just wanted to find out from you. I mean, you spoke about outcomes-driven CV, and you spoke about quality improvement and audits, clinical outcomes, the teams you've led. Like, how do you then craft that in a CV? Do you put like a portfolio of evidence, or do you just write a paragraph? How would you practically, what would it look like in a CV?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Z. So in your executive summary, how you demonstrate this is from a statistics perspective. So if, for example, as HR, I was able to drive performance management. As a result, we were able to realize an 80% improvement in the way we deliver things, in our membership numbers, in the recruitment numbers, in the retention numbers. That is information that you can summarize in your executive summary. It needs to be, so when we read this, we're not looking for evidence. We're not looking for documents that will then support your statement. But essentially, when we read it, we get a sense of who you are and what your impact is. The thing you want to win when you are putting a submission is that you just want to get an interview. And when we get to the interview phase, we get to unpack all these things that you would have written on your CV, which is important that you don't overstate yourself.
And then the last question, do you have a specimen CV that you can share with after the meeting?
I knew this question was
specimen. I've got a specimen CV. Yes, I guess you could also share it with me, and we'll circulate it to the attendees. I think that's actually a good request, and I think we'll be able to do that. So we can do that. Dr. Ntuli will send to all the participants. Actually, that is a great idea. And I think then one more question: should you include a personal photography with your CV?
I see this as a modern trend that people are moving in it's a direction that people are moving in. It's a personal decision. It makes no difference. It makes no difference. And I suppose it would differ from the type of positions that you are applying. So I see this a lot with marketing people. When they advertise, when they submit their CV, they put their picture there. And I suppose then it speaks to branding. So it depends on what you're trying to drive. What is the purpose of it? What purpose are you trying to drive in submitting your picture on a CV? So it depends. It differs from person to person.
All right. There are even more questions coming in now that, this conversation is coming to an end. So the last question, which will be a two-part question, is what is the role of AI in CV creation? And then also, what are the complete no-nos in CV creation?
All right, I'll answer the first part, and I've got Nsisi here who's going to help me with answering the second part. We come as a community of HR here. So the purpose of AI and how I've seen helps is that AI, remember, is a tool. So it helps you access all other information that would possibly be out there in the market relating to the level of the application or of the job that you are making an application for. So it helps you think about all other things that may perhaps not be in your CV or perhaps not be in the job ad that you need to be thinking about when you are crafting an application. So it enhances your presentation. It gives you details, it gives you additional information of other things that you could be thinking about. So AI should not be writing your CV, please. AI should be enhancing the presentation of your CV. And Mzizi, will you be able to help us with the second part? Okay, Mzizi is not coming through.
Mzizi, okay, you can help us with that one.
Oh,
If
there
you
you
could
go.
repeat the second part. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. We can hardly hear you, but good evening. Your connectivity is really bad, Mzizi.
Hi, good.
Mzizi, just try again. Kosiyama, I think you're going to have to step in because Mzizi's connectivity is not on our side.
Not a problem, not a problem. What is the second part? If you could just please repeat it for me, Dr.
So the second part of the question was, what are the complete no-nos in CV writing? And then the very, very, very last question is, how do I summarize 28 years of experience in 3 pages? So those two.
All right, so let me answer the last one. So you put it on AI and it summarizes it for you in 1 page.
So you put it
see
in
how
AI and you
helps.
say, please summarize into 3 pages, and then it will
But
help you.
in addition to AI, what you also do is not all the 28 years of experience are relevant to the job in which you're applying to, right? So we spoke about understand the position, look at your CV and create a linkage. See how you're going to align your CV application to the position. I am not certain, but I'm not sure if the whole 28 years will be relevant to reflect in the application for a job that in which you're applying for. And maybe if in your executive summary, you could take, if they are, you could take then the opportunity to then summarize it there. Also creating impact, also showcasing your contribution, showcase the skills that would strategically assist you in landing that position. Using keywords, using impact words, using, yeah, I think I've summarized it.
Yes. The complete
no-nos.
You can just give us top two, and then we'll move on.
I need to think. Complete no-nos. Please don't talk bad about your employer or previous employer. It's not a good sign. It leaves a bad taste for a person that's trying to recruit you. And a complete no-no, obviously, please don't lie. Don't lie on your CV. It's the worst thing you can do because the community of medical doctors is quite small. you don't want to get into a space where you feel embarrassed when you need to be demonstrating these qualities or these expertise that you said you had. So for me, don't speak badly of your previous employer. Two, please do not overstate your role. Do not lie. Don't. And those are the only two things. If you were interested in highlighting an area in which you are probably working on, say it like that. I am working towards, I am contributing. Like, you don't have to be, your leadership contribution does not necessarily mean that you are in a leadership role itself, but say it as it is, that in this capacity, in this committee, these are the contribution I'm making as a leader. Something like that. But don't overstate your position in a CV.
Thank you, Josiame, and thank you to the whole HR team. This was a brilliant, brilliant presentation. We really appreciate. Thank you for your efforts. Really very enlightening. I think we just took it so much for granted, the whole CV thing. I mean, we deal with the stethoscope. I mean, a CV is just, the last of the things we think about. So thank you very much. I think we are very much empowered. I would then like to move on to the next presentation, which is by the summer coding department. And this literally, we just want to share with medical doctors who have got little or no idea of what medical coding is all about. And our presenter is Deshri, and she is a coding specialist here at SAMA. Over to you, Desh.
Thank you, Dr. C. Good evening, everyone. Today, my presentation, it's on the introduction to medical coding. And in order for you to be able to decide whether you'd like to take it as an alternative healthcare role, or if you would like to make it a stream of extra income for yourself. So, Dr. Z, you are helping me with the slides. I think we have gone past, I just want to go back to the slide 2, which has my introduction on it.
Oh, sorry, this one.
It is the introduction, yes. Okay, understanding medical coding is quite important for medical doctors who have their own practices. I don't think I can stress that enough. Because your remuneration for the services that you render to the patients depends on accurate coding. Then we have some doctors who opt to not deal directly with medical schemes and with funders, and who show little interest in understanding medical coding. But overall, it's important for medical doctors to understand medical coding. It shows, good accountability for your own practice, for your own remuneration purposes. And patients also, they face, a lot of rejections from the medical schemes that they belong to. And so as a practice, it's good stewardship to help your patients, with the coding complexities that they face. But today we are here to explore medical coding as an alternative or a supplementary income and to enhance your leadership in the medical coding space. And so today's presentation, it's an introduction to medical coding to help you to understand what it is all about, in order for you to choose whether you want to transition into this alternative healthcare role. Okay, so the next slide, Dr. Z. The next slide, we are going to look at what do medical doctors have to do with medical coding. So I guess that you have made the connection already, medical doctors, medical coding. And doctors, you bring your diagnostic reasoning, your procedural insights, and your understanding of the complexity and the risk of procedures. Medical coding, it's not just about you choosing a random code out of the coding manual, but it's the application of your medical knowledge and your clinical insight. It deals with the anatomy and the physiology that you bring with you. So it's quite a smooth transition from being a medical doctor with your medical knowledge to be able to become a medical coding specialist and to move into the medical coding space. Your clinical knowledge is actually an advantage to understanding the medical coding, because procedural coding requires your understanding of anatomy and physiology, and that insight you already have, and it will help you to be able to make that transition quite easily. Coding knowledge helps doctors to code defensively. So you will be able to code. You won't just be randomly choosing a code out of a manual, but if you are challenged with a code that you have selected for a certain procedure or a certain diagnosis for a certain medical condition that you have, you'll be able to defend the selection that you have made. So you don't just depend on your receptionist, you don't depend on the bureau consultants, or even the medical coding specialists that are usually handling your accounts and all of that. Okay, so the next slide is what is medical coding. So medical coding is the transformation of the diagnosis, the procedures, the medical services, the equipment that you use in the doctor's practices into alphanumeric codes, and to accurately medical doctors understand the accurate clinical documentation that is needed. The clinical documentation that is required for medical coding has to be complete, and it has to be comprehensive. And therefore, comprehensive medical records is very important for accurate medical coding. Medical codes also tells funders or schemes about it, conveys what the patient's diagnosis is. It's the medical necessity for the treatments, for the services, or the supplies that the patient has received, and also for any unusual circumstances or medical condition that has affected the treatment and the diagnosis and services that have been rendered to the patient. So there will also be times that a medical coder will need to justify the use of certain procedural codes, and that is by way of supporting medical documentation and for you to be able to write comprehensive motivation letters to support the use of certain codes. So medical coding does not just stop there. It also includes, so the data that is gathered through medical coding, it's used to improve healthcare overall. So we talk about healthcare overall, so the results of the medical coding, it's submitted to funders or to medical schemes, and for reimbursement first of all, and then the data that is derived from codes, it is used to determine utilization. It is used for information purposes for the resources that were used for patient care, and also to build actuarial tables and to support public health and the actions that are taken in public health. So medical coding doesn't just stop at the doctor's practice. It doesn't just stop with the medical schemes, but it goes broader, and it covers a lot of different aspects, and it also then broadens your career choice that you will ultimately make. The diagnosis and the procedure codes that are taken from the medical record documentation, they include transcription of the clinical notes that the doctor usually has available. It's also laboratory results, its clinical radiology reports, and so on. And these are the supporting documents that is needed in order for a medical coder to be able to code effectively. And as medical doctors, I think you will have quite, a good understanding in being able to analyze and to be able to interpret these clinical supporting documents that is required of medical coding specialists from time to time. So the diagnosis and the procedural codes, they are taken from the medical record documentation, and that is the main information that is required. Medical coding is how documented clinical work is translated into numeric codes, which is recognized for reimbursement purposes for the services that are rendered to patients, that is rendered by doctors to their patients. So, but the main purpose of medical coding should never revolve around the remuneration of services, but it should be around upholding good coding standards. Okay, so then we're going to just go on to the different types of the next slide. I think we are going to be on slide 5.
Let me know when to stop, Dash.
Okay, just go back to the one with the ICD-10, because we're going to just look at the different types of codes that are used in South African medical coding, which we're going to start with the ICD-10 codes, and then we're going to go on to the CPT codes, and then we're going to look at the MDCM codes. These are the most important codes that medical specialists are using in the South African coding industry. There are other codes, such as NEPI codes and other codes like that. But here at SAMA, we are mainly dealing with the ICD-10 codes, the medical doctors coding manual codes, and the CPT codes. Okay, so the first one is the ICD-10 codes. ICD is International Classification of Diseases. That's what it stands for, and it's a diagnostic standard that is recognized in South Africa. It's a national standard for South Africa. It is a coding system that was implemented in 2005, and the South African Medical Association does publish, or we do, we have created a browser which we do offer as one of the products for sale. We are not the custodian of the ICD-10 code. It's the responsibility of the National Department of Health to do the updating of the information in the ICD-10 code manual. So the purpose of ICD is to translate diagnosis, conditions, diseases, and so on, and other health problems from a description to an alphanumeric code. And in South Africa, we are using ICD-10 coding. In America, they use, they're using ICD-10 That is a more, it's more clinically modified. It's more specified, but yeah, it's quite a vast topic, but just so that you have an idea, that is just an introduction of ICD-10 codes. And then the next slide is the CPT codes and the use of CPT codes in South Africa. CPT codes is the abbreviation for current procedural terminology. It is an American-based coding system, and it's used, but it is relevant for medical doctors in South Africa. There is a group of doctors that were using it quite widely, but recently they have actually moved away from that, and it's mainly being used by hospitals for remuneration of their services. So the Summer does use CPT. We use it, we actually adopt CPT, the American coding system, to suit the South African environment. And so we call our CPT coding manual the complete CPT for South Africa, or the CCSA manual. So that one, it's it's available in electronic form only as well. Okay, and another important thing is that the CPT codes, so Summer uses the CPT coding system as a benchmark to develop new codes in the medical doctor's coding manual. So you're probably wondering, what is the medical doctor's coding manual, or it's more commonly referred to as the MDCM. So that is the next, yeah, we are on that slide at the moment. So the medical doctor's coding manual, the MDCM, it's a nationally accepted standard of medical coding in South Africa. And Summer is the custodian of this coding in South Africa. And Summer works in cooperation with specialist groups in order to shape and to refine and to develop the codes. And we are usually developing these codes on a yearly basis. The manual is updated yearly with additions, with revisions, and with deletions. And the MDCM codes, it consists of coding for medical doctors, for GPs, and it's for GP specialists and for anesthetists. So here, even with MDCM, with CPT coding, with MDCM, ICD-10 code, clinical documentation, it's pivotal. We have to, we rely on accurate clinical documentation to essentially support the diagnosis and the procedural coding. So the selection of the code will depend on the comprehensiveness and the completion of the clinical documentation that is supplied by the medical doctor. So, and as we all know, if it was not documented, it was not done, and full stop. We don't go any further than that. And also just to bear in mind that the higher the accuracy of the coding, the lesser or the rejections will be. And the MDCM, it helps us to ensure that coding remains compliant to the coding standards. It it protects practices from audits and from forensic investigations. Okay, so you're probably wondering now, we have gone through all of these things. How do we bring, all of these things together? I know that if you haven't heard about medical coding before, it can be quite daunting to hear all these different terms and, the different types of coding and everything. But to bring it all together, we just look at where do we start and the options that you can consider in order for you to be able to decide whether you'd like to take it as an alternative healthcare role, or if you would like to take it on as an extra income stream for yourself. So where do we start with this? We start with the training. So we have we don't actually at Summer currently we're not offering any ICD-10 code, MDCM, or CPT code training, but we can refer you, to the relevant persons to be able to get you in contact for that. But it starts with the training on the coding manuals in order for you to become accredited and for you to become recognized as a medical coding specialist in the industry. And thereafter, it doesn't limit you to just be able to take on a medical coding specialist role. So it opens up many opportunities for you. One of the first opportunities is as a medical legal consultant. So here, you use your expert knowledge to ensure that coding complies with regulatory standards. So you will be using your coding knowledge, your understanding of coding as an accredited coder to be able to uphold coding standards in according to regulatory standards in the industry. And then secondly, medical coding, medical information management. And this is at the hospital administration level to be able to manage and to analyze coded patient data. So it opens up opportunities even at hospital management level for you as a medical doctor. And then it enables roles in medical schemes and other funding companies. Its roles such as medical advisors for, as part of a forensic audit team, and also as part of training, in certain institutions. And it also opens up opportunities as part of hospital management. So just for us to know is it does not replace, it does not, it extends your medical training, the medical coding. It supplements your medical coding. And medical coding as a medical doctor allows for you to not just use the system, but to become a leader in medical coding, to improve the coding systems. And a way of you doing that is to be able to join a specialist, join a specialist society. Specialist societies are led by medical doctors, and they are the forefront of, and they are shaping the development of coding in the medical doctor's coding manual and in other coding systems around South Africa. So that's quite an important role that you can transition into. And then also once you've obtained your accreditation as a coder, you can go further to obtain your accreditation as a trainer, and you can that opens up opportunities for you to provide medical coding training and workshops at different levels, at medical schemes, at doctors' practices, at bureaus, and wherever the need may be, you will be able to provide the training that is needed. Okay, so yeah, in conclusion, I hope that you have learned something new from this, and that it has opened up your options for employment, for taking up this as an alternative health role, or considering it as a supplementary income source. Thanks.
Thank you, Deshri. I think we should just inform the summer members that as summer, we are definitely looking into creating training courses for coding. And yeah, we are looking into it. It's been a demand for a while, but we are working together with different partners. I see a question here that says, where does one go for training for coding? So it depends which one of the courses that you want to do. You can just get in touch with Deshri, or Deshri, if you just want to put your email address. Our email address is coding@samedical.org. That's correct. Yeah, coding@samedical.org. So you can just, if you're interested in doing a training, just tell us, do you want to do MDCM? Do you want to do ICD-10? Do you want to do CPT training? And then we'll be able to take it from there and advise you. But, Desh, we are dealing here with medical doctors. And
Yes.
I think when it comes to coding, it's always what would be like the top 2 codes out of the top of your head that doctors should know about. So I know consultation codes are usually quite a big, they cause a lot of confusion amongst doctors. And then also just even, we always sell them the MDCM book, but then, how can a doctor be able to make sense of the book? What is just the approach to the book? Maybe those 2 as a start.
All right. So I think one of the problematic codes is ICU coding, the understanding of ICU coding. It's because of the complexity of the different categories of ICU that is being built. We have a lot of coding inquiries regarding the ICU coding. So it's, but it boils down, to us for the correct interpretation of the code, which the medical doctor's coding manual, it does provide all of that information. It provides guidelines about how to build ICU codes for different categories of ICU. And sometimes, the interpretation in the MDCM, it is a bit limited, but as medical coding specialists, we are there to assist with the further, with the interpretation of coding where further clarity is needed with the medical coding. And then the approach with the medical doctor's coding manual, we have it available in the electronic format and in a hard copy. There's not much of a difference. They both have the same information. The book is, it consists of different body systems. So, it's different specialities. I think the only way to properly know it is for you to go through it system by system. It's the integumentary system, the cardiovascular system, there's an index, there's and then, it takes you to the different body systems. It gives you a description of the coding. It gives you the clinical procedural units for each of the codes. And then it gives you a short interpretation on how to apply the codes. But the coding team at SAMA is also there to support the interpretation of the codes in the medical doctor's coding manual. That's if, there is further clarity that is needed regarding that. Yes.
Yeah, I think we should actually do a webinar on, just approach to the MDCM for medical doctors, so that it is, it's easy for doctors to access, even if you are not available on the phone, then they can just refer to that. All right, thank you. And then the next question is, as SAMA, we usually hold, last year we had a coding connect, and then this year we're gonna have a coding conference. So what is it that, what gets taught in the coding conference? What can doctors gain from that coding conference? And then as well as, okay, I'll give you that one. And then the second one is, some codes do not reflect the intricacies or difficulties of the procedure. So how do you change that? Is it how do you change it, or how do you charge it, or how do you change it? I'm not sure. Dr. Lee, just type again. Are you saying how do you change it, or how do you charge it? I'm unclear. If you can just touch on the coding one in the meantime, how do you change that? So codes that do not reflect the intricacies or the difficulties of the procedure. How do you change that, Desiree? You mute.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there will be some codes that might not reflect the intricacy or the complexity of certain procedures. The units that are allocated to certain codes might be lower than what the procedure actually entailed. The doctor's effort, the time that was spent on the procedure, and all of that. In those terms, there might not be a change that can be brought about. There is a rule. We have, there's procedural codes, then we have modifiers, and then we have rules. So there is a rule J in the medical doctor's coding manual. It's when a procedure has this proportionately low units for the procedure that was performed. It's in cases where a procedure, it might be extended for what it usually would what a doctor would usually spend on a procedure. So in those cases, there is a rule J that can be applied. A doctor will have to motivate for that, for extra remuneration for his time and for his effort for the procedure. But then if the code really does not cater, for what the doctor has done, then there's also, if there isn't a dedicated code for that procedure, there's also rule C. So we use a comparable code in the medical doctor's coding manual for that purpose. So you use the comparable code, say for instance, a gastroscopy, code, you can use it as a comparable code for another endoscopic code that the doctor performed in his rooms, for which there isn't a code that is dedicated in the MDCM. All of those will require a motivation letter, which will be submitted to the medical scheme. Medical schemes usually have, their own policies. They have their own business rules and so on. And so it's up to them, to review the motivation letter and to decide on the funding for that. And then if rule J or rule C does not suffice, then perhaps we can consider approaching the society, whether it's a medical doctor in the industry, or if it's a medical scheme or whoever it is, you go via the society in order to request a change, in order for perhaps the code to be increased in the clinical procedural units, or the description of the coding, or, in some way, or if all of that does not work, also just to add, for us to introduce a new code in to the system, into the MDCM. But that will need to be done via the respective society.
Thank you, Desh. The question about Coding Conference and Coding Connect, if you can just touch on that as your last comment.
Okay, sorry, can you just repeat the question about the conference?
So the Coding Connect and the Coding Conference, what can doctors learn from those type of platforms?
The upcoming, if we are talking about the upcoming one or the previous ones that we have had, we always try to, the purpose of us, having these conferences is so that, we gather our healthcare professionals, both medical doctors, clinicians, and medical coders. And, in order for us to share our expert knowledge about coding. Currently, the AI automation and the digital transformation in coding is, a topic that is quite of interest to the medical coding at the moment. So, currently we are looking into that topic. And so we want to bring, coders, and we want to bring clinicians together to be able to navigate this new transformation that is hitting South Africa very, I can't say slowly, very quickly. In other countries, it's already been introduced, but in South Africa itself, I think we are still getting there. But once we are in it, we need to be able to adapt to the complexities, to the challenges, and also to be able to work together as clinicians, as coders, to be able to navigate the system. And, we have to work together to be able to uphold the coding standards in the industry.
Thank you very much. I want to let you go, but there's a very important question that has come in, and Mr. Mnyaka, I know, is on standby, but believe me, we'll have enough time for him. Give me 2 minutes at the maximum, Dish. What are the next steps when there are codes in the manual, but the medical scheme decides not to pay for it?
Okay,
what would be
usually
the next steps?
So usually that is quite a common challenge that we face. When we do receive coding inquiries, that's one of the most common inquiry that we receive, is where medical schemes are not accepting the codes in the new codes that are introduced into the MDCM. So with regard to that, we try our best to find comparable codes. The doctor has to provide, complete supporting documents, that is comprehensive clinical theater notes, the preoperative radiology and clinical reports, and the account. We need to see, what exactly the doctor did in order for us to be able to best assist, with an alternative code recommendation. And like we said, the society, specialist societies, they work closely with SAMA for us to uphold our coding standards. So if there is a code that the medical scheme is not accepting and we need alternative codes, we work closely with the specialist societies to be able to accommodate where there isn't, where the codes are not being accepted by the medical schemes.
Thank you. I would encourage the doctors to continue sending in their questions. I think it will help us even for future coding presentations. Maybe just give us an idea of what are some of the topics we can talk about. Right out of the top of my head, I'm thinking of like cheat sheets and all of that. I think that's some of the things we need to go into in the next webinar, Dish. When we are talking about coding and go now into the details of, these codes and really help doctors to make sure that we do coding well so that we prevent even future forensic audits being done on the doctors. So thank you very much to you and your team. Excellent job. Continue to shine the flag where coding is concerned at SAMA. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Now, the next presenter and the last one is Mr. Lubabalo Mnyaka. He will talk to us about virtual consultations. This is becoming quite a popular option, a way to, the junior doctors starting off as well as seasoned doctors who actually want to expand their practices. So over to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Just want to make sure that I've selected the right screen. Good evening, colleagues. I am Lubabalo, as Doc has introduced me, from AfriMed Healthcare. I will be talking virtual care or virtual consultations. We've been in the industry for the past 12 years, and all the solutions that we've been developing are informed by the likes of you that is on the ground. And talking about virtual care or virtual consultations, what is it exactly? Because there's many ways we define it, but what does HPCSA say? And presenting from our system called HealthSpace, you find all the information there. For example, as you can read there, that virtual care basically is another form of offering care, not in person, could be via a video call.
Can you
a
make
phone
it a
call.
bit bigger? Sorry, Mr. Mnyaka. Just make it a bit bigger if you can.
Is that fine?
A bit more. Yes, much better. Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, it's another way of delivering care using technology. As I've said, it could be a video call, it could be a phone call, an SMS, a WhatsApp, or any other various media that is defined as a medium of communication between the patient and the provider. But we've seen, as Doc said, that there's quite a number of platforms that have been used as far as virtual care. And actually just touched on the coding. She touched on having records and being ready for audits. So this is where I will actually touch in that. How do you then protect yourself in that process in making sure that you're able to provide proof of care given? And this may be quite difficult because the care was not given in person, and you would have to find ways to keep those records and to actually prove from the informed consent process to actually delivering care, and that is the processes after. So it becomes quite complex the moment you dig in. But basically, let's look at what can be done via a virtual care or telehealth or virtual consultations. We can do follow-ups. We can give clinical advice or triage, which I'll come back to that. Repeat scripts, mental health, remote monitoring. We've seen it happening quite a lot. And medical documents, your patient education. These are all the activities that we are well aware of. But what can be done on telehealth? HPCSA is not saying it is illegal, but they advise against actually giving diagnosis first time over a virtual care, because especially for conditions that require physical examination, we understand that not every patient actually need to have the visit for the first time visit physically, but based on the presentation of the patient, then this would require you maybe to refer to a local healthcare professional, whether it's a nurse or another GP practice, so that you can get, a more informed physical examination for you to continue giving that care. Physical procedures, as I've touched, and issuing of prescriptions without proper clinical context. This practice has been, going on for some time. It is all good until there's an audit or there's a litigation. And then now you have to provide, for example, what has led to that process where you're actually issuing a script. And that can be the first consult, that there has to be investigations getting to that. And from an ethical perspective as well, especially if you look at antibiotic stewardship, we've seen especially metronidazole and ciprofloxacin, they get scripted a lot without actually, lab tests and going through the processes to make sure that indeed, the script is for that specific condition. And then emergency care, and obviously it's self-explanatory that there you would need to refer the patient straight to trauma. And the big part, which is often missed, is the informed consent. When you're giving that virtual consult over WhatsApp or TikTok or whatever that's private, in terms of having that conversation with the patient, is there a record of informed consent? And is the system that's being used encrypted end to end? And if so, can you provide proof of that? So these are all the things that come in when there are problems, and usually we don't see these until they happen, and you find yourself in a very difficult position. So as much as we're bringing in technology, especially in healthcare, because it's not just, a software as a service, we're talking about people's lives, we're talking about the payer or the funder, we're talking about the patient themselves, we're talking about the career as well that you've worked hard for. So there are many moving pieces that we need to take care of as far as regulatory and ethics. So basically, I've just touched on ethics and safety, and if telehealth is not used in the right way, what it can lead to, as I've mentioned, misdiagnosis, antibiotic misuse, delayed emergency care, and legal exposure for clinicians. So it is very important that when we talk of virtual care, we are aware of these, but this is not to create fear. It's just to create awareness that when we do it from a more informed point of view. Okay, let me just minimize my screen here. So just to give you a practical example, when we're talking virtual consultation, doctors are given tools. Here is a tool to run virtual consultations, but that's not where it starts. Is where's your captive audience? Okay, so how are patients going to reach you? Yes, you have a tool, but it doesn't bring patients to your practice, to your virtual practice. This is where we always advise that there has to be some sort of captive audience. So in our case, for example, we partnered with your health and wellness service providers. As they do their corporate wellness events, there's cases that they pick up, and then we become the referral channel that doctors already using the system, and therefore there's that captive audience that now nurses know where to refer. And then secondly, we have these mobile clinics that are nurse-led, and these clinics, as nurses pick up cases, once again, they have an opportunity now to refer. And not only that, sometimes your week is not busy throughout. There are hours that are a bit quiet, and these are the hours that you can actually open for virtual care. And this now removes geographical barriers around your practice, and you get to fill up your practice. So it's just another income stream as well. When used properly, it can really add a lot of value to your practice. I've mentioned that you need captive audience, you need a referral pathway. Okay, you have this case. So do you have a referral pathway already established around your system for virtual care? Is it integrated with laboratories that you can simply click and sorry, can simply click and place an order? Or you still have to look out in terms of, okay, where do I make this order and how will they receive it, etc. So you need those tools. Also, you want to know, can I refer a patient if, for example, there's a case that needs a referral? So you have that tool. All of this is in one system, and it also protects you because you're working on one system. And then post-visit, am I able to engage with the patient? Does the patient have access as well to the system? This system, for example, is linked to WhatsApp and also as a web-based application. So this allows you then to continuously engage with the patient. This also adds value as well. So it's not just a matter of having a tool, but does the tool empower the patient? The tool needs to be a big brother to the patient and an assistant to you as a doctor. And at the end of the day, you're able to give the most efficient, cost-effective care. And for the patient as well, they feel cared for without actually you having to break your back because you're already working a lot in terms of the hours that you put in, you know. And then we move to record keeping, which is the most important part. And that, how well is your record keeping? This could be for your medical aid claims. Let's say a claim gets rejected, but can you provide proof of that? Or you get audited. Let's say a case that you did 3 years ago. Now the whole practice will come to standstill looking for that file and crossing fingers that all the papers in that file are still there. So this is why then we make sure that when you decide on virtual care, use the system that actually allows you to capture notes. But once again, I know when you're talking of capturing notes, like, okay, already we're spending 40% of our time, which is billable, on admin. So now we have to capture detailed notes. This is where there are tools that allow you to actually efficiently capture notes. You may not be good at typing, that is fine. And then you move to AI scribing, but you know that with AI scribing as well, you still need to pay attention and to read what has been transcribed so that you make sure that it is the right thing, you know. And then thirdly, we have what you call, for example, in our case, a click option with treatment baskets. So you don't have to record or type anything, because we know that primary healthcare has been so well researched. We have national treatment guidelines. So there is absolutely no need for you to stress about typing or transcribing, you know, your AI scribe, for example, during your virtual care. Let's say a patient presents with acute diarrhea. So you simply click there, and then now you're talking to the patient. As you're listening, okay, there's loose stool, okay, there's abdominal pain, there's vomiting, there's fever. Okay, it's been happening for 1 to 3 days. So you see here, you've actually just clicked through as the patient is talking without losing attention, and they feel heard and valued. And then now you're coming to your objective part. Okay, what are your observations then from what you've engaged with the patient? Okay, signs of dehydration, and then possible dry mucous membranes. And then now you need to move to the diagnosis. You have not typed or recorded anything, and the system gives you the diagnosis. It is A09, which is the acute diarrhea. Okay, so how do I treat this? Then you already have those options there, and then you can pick whichever option that you would like to choose. And if you would like to send, a stool for assessment, then you can do that. And then you sign off a consult, and the consult is done. You did not type anything, you did not record, and you have a full clinical note that's saved for you. You're saving time, you're more efficient, and it's just continuous. There's no need for typing. So such tools, they help you to save time because we know that you're selling time, and every minute lost on admin is a billable 15 minutes lost, basically. So how does virtual care work? A patient would have been registered and they would have signed the consent, or they would have booked via an online platform or WhatsApp. In our case, we integrated with both. So you would start a consult by picking up a patient. And then the patient is sent an SMS with the link. They don't have to log in onto any system. They also send an SMS, sorry, an email as well, and the WhatsApp. So those three. So they can use any of those. And then you create a meeting room. You're still on one platform. You're not using WhatsApp. You're not using any other platform, because you need this audit trail in a case where the care that you're given is challenged. Then you can also copy as well the link, and then you share with the patient. And then from there, then you're able to actually join the consult, as you can see, and then the patient joins on their side, and then the consult starts. Probably wondering, okay, so let's say I want to check vitals, because it is important that I know how the patient is doing. There's a technology that has been well researched. It's called RPPG. And this allows you to actually take vitals, vitals virtually. I'll show you just now. So as I look straight to the screen, as you can see, it's taking my heart rate, and it's also taking my blood pressure as well, my respiratory heart rate and oxygen saturation. Basically, you didn't have to have someone taking blood pressure on the patient, and you have all these vitals right there just by asking them to look into the camera of their phone, and you're able to get all these. Obviously, this is not diagnostic, it's screening. Like the device that you would have, you would be still screening, because it allows you then to see and need to refer that patient then maybe for a more diagnostic procedure, whether it's at a lab or at a different clinical institution, to actually get an accurate diagnosis. But this is a starting point, in that you know that you've screened all your patients. This is mostly bypassed because you are not there, and the patient doesn't have their own BP machine, they don't have their own glucometer or their own bathroom scale. So all these technologies are there to allow you to actually make a more informed decision. So when you're choosing any virtual care platform, these are the things that you look for. It doesn't only protect you in terms of giving care, but it also gives you pride that you gave a more informed care, and that should make you feel good. And you know that it's not just a matter of, hi, how can I help you? Do you need a script? Do you need a sick note? Okay, thank you, bye. Because at times that is what patients get, and that patient never returns, basically, because they feel like they were robbed. Patients talk to each other, unfortunately, and then they don't talk to you as the provider or the healthcare professional. And you wonder why you have such a high patient turnover, and find that they're not happy, and they will never complain to you, because patients generally, they're scared of doctors. So that is why we have such tools that empower you to make sure that you give the best care possible. Once again, time is a very sensitive matter. Patient says, I have an ECG that I got from the clinic, but now what do you do with that if you're on a separate platform? Whereas when you're on this platform like this, you're able to actually load an X-ray, an ECG, and have the system actually analyzes it for you. And then from there, you're able to actually get an idea of the case you're dealing with. Maybe just for a practical example, I can just check if I can get a dummy ECG that we can read. So all these tools are there to basically empower healthcare professionals to save you time without risking your career into misdiagnosis, etc. So these are specifically there for that reason. Okay, let's select patient. Then we pick the ECG. So the patient would have sent you that ECG, or you ask them to load it from their side. And as you're busy talking to them, the system is analyzing that ECG. And they also feel valued as well. And from your side, because the patient cannot see the analytic side, from your side, you feel that you're more empowered to give proper care. As you can see, this has just given you I would say, a second opinion or some draft at least opinion that, at times you can miss things because of time. But now it allows you to have that extra eye because you would wonder, why am I picking something different from this? Obviously, you have a better understanding and you are more empowered because you are a clinician, you are the one taking responsibility. So AI will never replace you. It's actually a tool that helps you to have that, second opinion, that assistant, and it helps you in terms of note taking as well. As you can see, it can be very detailed. And this helps you. So you can run echoes, you can run lab results, you can run x-rays, and you can actually use AI Scribe as well if you feel it helps for you, or you can just use that click system where you just click through and then you get a diagnosis at the end. So there are many ways to actually embrace technology, especially when it comes to virtual care. What I would advise is that there's many companies that have built beautiful systems to offer virtual care. But for your risk exposure or risk management, please make sure that you're able to get informed consent and the system is fully encrypted end to end, and you can actually prove that. It offers you audit trail that should you be challenged at a court of law, you're able to actually provide that. And the system, it shouldn't allow you to edit saved notes. You cannot delete or edit a saved note. Instead, you make a corrective note. But because these systems are built by good developers that don't necessarily understand the clinical side of things, when you say, I would like to have a delete button here, or I would like to have an edit button, they will edit for you. But now, if you bring that system to the court of law, what are the chances that you cooked the report that you're providing? Because they can see that you're able to edit records, and we know that you shouldn't be editing or deleting records. Instead, you should be making corrective records. You can make a corrective one, and then we hide it from our side so that it doesn't confuse the patient. But the record stays there. Should you be challenged, then we're able to generate that record that you can present. So it's those minor things that we never really think of. And also coming to coding. And the big topic, you may not necessarily be as well abreast of, coding and knowledgeable or experienced, but you need basics. For example, you should be able to check this patient that I'm about to see. Do they have benefits in their medical aid, and will I be paid, before I see this patient? And then you're able to do your firm checks, and then you can actually submit claims on your own, or you have your billing house. So there's various ways that you can make sure that indeed you get paid what you deserve. So I'll just show you an example of one of our virtual care clients or doctors. Your profile, this is how your profile looks to patients, and then they can read about you, and then they can read about your services, and then they're able to pick a date, and then they book you. And then if they have an account, then they can put in their login details. And then there's various payment methods. So what we've realized is that, for example, someone is working at the mines in Northwest, they're coming from Eastern Cape, and Gogo there has a nice smartphone that she uses to chat with the grandson or with the son. So already they have a smartphone that actually can be used, for to benefit them health-wise. But now, if the guy sends money through Capitec or whichever bank, and then Gogo also has needs there, especially with the young ones, then that money ends up being used for something else. So we allow actually people to buy vouchers and share vouchers for virtual care. So this helps because one can buy as many vouchers as possible for the loved ones or those that they want to donate to. Once again, this forms that part of captive audience. I was saying that there's many points that allow you to be successful as the virtual care doctor, because you're not just given a tool and then you have to hunt for clients. There's various vehicles that are used to make sure that you get exposure to patients as much as possible. So there's also various payment methods like your cash, which is like your card payment, and then your medical aid or using a voucher. So we've really tried to put together informed systems that empower doctors to take up virtual care. There are various ways as well to partner, for example, with the likes of us, Afro Health Space, in that you don't have to buy or to subscribe to a system. You can actually partner with you in terms of empowering you, especially junior doctors. So there's various vehicles, not just us, it could be any virtual care platform, but it needs to make sure, you need to make sure that it covers those points so that you are protected. And at the end of the day, it's all about giving care to patients. And I think I've covered virtual care, and maybe I can take questions.
Thank you, Lubabalo. Thank you very much for that presentation. I really appreciated the way that you've made it so practical, because I think sometimes this can be quite abstract for doctors. And I'm really happy that there has been a bit more clarity this time around on which are the type of patients that can be seen in the virtual care platform versus those that cannot be seen. I know that, for example, you also see a lot of patients that are in the mines, for example. Can you just give us an idea, in the mines, obviously, there is an occupational health clinic that is already there. So how do you link up with those type of clinics? And then as well as how do you deal with, issues of connectivity? Because as we have load shedding sometimes, and also, so how do you navigate the connectivity challenges between the patient and the doctor, or just getting access to doctors?
Thank you so much, Doc. Starting with the mines, that's one of the captive audience or platform, because as you've rightfully said, they have occupational health, but they're limited in terms of their scope, and sometimes it's a matter of capacity. So now it means that whatever overflow, even if they have in-house doctors, and in terms of overflow, then now they have a referral pathway that is reliable, that they know that we have so many doctors in our virtual care platform, and they're able to refer. Sometimes patient would want, maybe would want, they would be gender specific, for example, say, no, I want to speak to a male doctor or a female, or I want them to speak Venda or Zulu. So it allows them those options because the patient wants to be comfortable so that they can fully express themselves. So that is exactly what we offer them. And we continue to engage with other big employers as well, offering the same value proposition, in that even though they have occupational health in-house or on-site, but they need to refer those cases. At times, it shouldn't be a guesswork, it should be a clear pathway that, okay, these are the teams that we're working with. It just keeps things easy and more streamlined as well. And then in terms of connectivity, we've been blessed that certain places now, especially places of work, have Wi-Fi, and patients can connect to Wi-Fi, but it uses like such a low, it has such a low bandwidth, the system is built in that way. Or someone can actually buy them a voucher just for the consult. It won't even take more than 10 megabytes, the entire consult. And then at times there are no networks, which is the unfortunate part, that there's no signal in certain areas of the country. This is where now in some areas we have actually donated Wi-Fi to schools, to churches. So at least one, instead of traveling like the lady 2 years back that traveled 14 kilometers, 8 months pregnant, just for your prenatal checkup. So in that case, for example, if there was a church or a school nearby, then they would have still received care. So we're trying to meet patients halfway in that regard.
Thank you. The last question, because we're 8 minutes over time, and this will be quick, Lubabalo. With digitization, there's a serious risk, an ethical risk to consider. So what surety can we give to the patients regarding their sensitive information?
Indeed. This is a very important question. One, all the information that we keep is hosted locally, and that is in South Africa, so it never leaves the country. And secondly, no one can access you as a patient, no one can access your file if you have not given access to that file. So basically, there is that it forms part of that informed consent, and you can also revoke that access as well. So you are in control, you know exactly who has access to your record, what have they written, and basically It's like in the olden days where you had your clinic card. So you carried with you and you knew at any given point who wrote in your card, just that it could be lost or misplaced. So now it's digital. You're actually working with it. And we have also various layers of security that we've employed. Obviously, nothing is bulletproof. We continue to improve our processes. We are compliant with a lot of standards, I think about 7 standards now. So in terms of really making sure that we are fully compliant as far as keeping people's information, and not just the patient, the doctor and the payer as well.
Colleagues, we've come to the end of our webinar. Thank you very much, Lubabalo. Thank you for the work that you're doing with us. We thank you, colleagues. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you to all the doctors. Please continue to send in your questions on the chat. We really just want to tell you and remind you about the Summer Health Summit, as you can see over here. We hope to see you all in Durban in May. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.